It was also in this council that the Catholic Easter was defined, the first Sunday after the so-called Paschal moon, the latter being the full moon after the true astronomical vernal equinox, which, at the time of the Council of Nicaea, fell on March 20th. Apparently, the true astronomical vernal equinox was established in Alexandria, Egypt, in 325 CE as being March 20th, that the Julians adopted as the Julian calendar. From 325 CE onward, March 20th came to be regarded as the ecclesiastical vernal equinox. But because the Julian calendar of 365 days, which is adjusted by a leap year every 4 years, drifted forward from the true astronomical year, which is called the tropical year in tropical astronomy or astrology, which is actually 365.24 days. So this drifted by 1 day every 131 years by the time Pope Gregory the 13th had it in 1582. It had drifted such that the ecclesiastical vernal equinox now fell 10 days after the true astronomical vernal equinox. So, to pull back the equinox to where it had been at the Council of Nicaea, Pope Gregory the 13th decided that the next day after October 4th would be October 15th. Okay, so that's a lot of words, but here's what's going on. Pope Gregory the 13th, they've realized over centuries that with the invention of leap year, which is an imperfect calendar, so the Julian and the Gregorian calendar are imperfect, and they had to add in leap years, which is why other calendars like the Egyptian calendar, some of the ancient Chinese calendars, the Mayan calendar are way more accurate than our Western calendar, which is based on a Julian calendar. Point is that they realized that they were falling forward by having this leap year in there, and at some point they had to correct it. And they were 10 days ahead when they just finally decided we have to correct it. So every 131 years would add up to 1 day going forward. So Easter and all these solar holidays and lunar holidays were always slowly migrating because the year is actually not tracking the sun accurately. So they had to make adjustments. One of the things to think about here is that the church has been in control of the calendar and time for thousands of years. Perfect example of this is the prime meridian, which is now in Greenwich, England. It used to be in Paris, France. It used to be in Rome before that. And originally it was in Egypt, in Cairo, which is where the Great Pyramid is. So you have to think about that. The word pyramid, etymologically, actually means pira or pyre, middle. It means middle fire or middle line, because we get the word prime meridian from fire. Pyre and prime mean the same root etymologically. So the prime meridian is the pyramid that marks time. And basically, in ancient Egypt, they were the first ones to map this out on planet Earth, and they marked it with the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and it was stolen from them as they were conquered. It was stolen from Cairo and taken to Rome by the Romans, and then it was actually moved for other political reasons to Paris, and then now it's in England. So they've been tracking the sun and controlling time and then dispensing the stories through biblical scripture for thousands of years. Okay, moving on. Christian tradition has it that the old basilica built by Constantine the Great was supposedly built on the very spot where St. Peter the Apostle was martyred and buried. It would have been directed as the custom then toward the rising sun on the vernal equinox. But since the date of March 25th was regarded as the day of Annunciation, when according to Christian tradition the Archangel Gabriel had announced the Annunciation, to the Virgin Mary that she would be the Mother of God. March 25th to December 25th being, of course, the 9-month of human gestation. So here we got some pretty powerful implications. We know that the Christ story is actually the story of the Son, which is where the word Christos comes from. The crystalline consciousness, or superconsciousness, or Christos, actually refers to the solar consciousness in Hermetic teachings, which Rome stole from Egypt. So the point here is that the story of Christos, not the man Jesus, but the story of Christ, is way older than Christianity. And this is why you have all these solar gods like Mithras and Zoroaster and Dionysus, and there's so many of them, all the way into northern Africa and Egypt, the Dogon people, all the way back to Horus. So Horus is a solar god, and that's why Horus and Christ have the same story. Born of a virgin birth. Birthday is celebrated on December 25th. Their resurrection is celebrated on or near the spring equinox, which is Easter. So the point here is that the story of Christ is 100% astronomical and is a story about our sun moving through the sky in a solar year. Now, I'm not trying to piss people off and talk about Jesus as not being real. I wasn't there. I don't know if he was real or not. There's a whole lot of information out there. There's a lot of people, scholars, that would say there were many Jesuses out there at his time speaking and proselytizing. The point is that you need to understand and realize that the stories in the Bible, despite what you believe, are all based on astronomical movements. The entire stories, even the characters, the names, the events, they're all encoded as mythological or astrotheological stories. Moving on. In Roman Catholicism, the supremely important feast was also called the Feast of the Incarnation. That is, when the Spirit became flesh. This is all-important feast day on March 25th, was now used for determining the date for Easter, instead of March 20th. All these religious feasts, however, were locked into the Julian calendar, but as we saw earlier, the problem was that the Julian calendar drifted away from the true astronomical year. The Jesuit astronomers at the Collegio Romano, however, had been aware of this for some time. In early 1582, the top Jesuit astronomer Christopher Clovis persuaded Pope Gregory XIII to reform the Julian calendar by deleting 10 days of the year. The purpose was manifold, but it was done mainly to create a universal calendar. It was given the name Gregorian in honor of the Pope, so that all Christians born in the East and the West, presumably as well as people in Protestant countries, would be encouraged to celebrate Easter at the same time, but also, perhaps more so, to pull back the liturgical feast of the Annunciation, also called the Incarnation. It has been, at the time of Constantine, the Gregorian, and when the sun still rose in alignment with the Basilica of the Vatican. Okay, so there you have it. This is information that the Vatican itself, you can read. This is not something they dispute. Pope Gregory did this in honor of the date of Constantine and the Council of Nicaea to honor the Annunciation, which was when Gabriel spoke to Mary, said, "You're going to give birth to a son," and he meant a sun, a solar sun, which is why in the stories when they say, "Hey, you're going to give birth, Mary, to a son, you're going to name your child Emmanuel," because Emmanuel was actually a name of the sun. El refers to Elohim, which are the light messengers of the sun. And Emmanuel refers to the Son, etymologically. This is why Jesus did not get the name Jesus at his birth. And this is why the title of Christ, or Christos, is attached to him, because it means the light of the world, the sun. And this is also why the etymology of the word itself, Jesus, refers to the sun. So you can look at some of my other videos and you'll see this. But basically, YES in Hebrew means sun or fire, and IES in Greek means the same thing, sun. And the letter J didn't exist until the 15th century, so in English we say JES, yes, which means the sun. And the Jesus, S-U-S, is actually an English derivative of the word Zeus, which is a Greek word for sun god. So Jesus really means yes, Zeus, which means sun god or fire.